Yo, what's up? Snorting Corey Johnson back out here again, taking a step ahead, trying to get 3 degrees buffer. You know what I'm saying? Yo, we out here for real. Another day of class. Actually, the first day of the second part of the second class, which feels like the third class, even though it's just another week of this one class. But anyways, like, subscribe. We're going to get to the content here and talk about this thing a little bit. This class was really cool. Got a new professor in, just started here at the seminary about a couple months ago, really. And man, he was bringing the heat today. So we talked about mission in terms of biblical theology, practical theology, systematic theology, all that kind of stuff. And the interesting main point that he came up with was essentially God's mission. The idea of mission is central to the Bible and the biblical narrative and the biblical story. And if you take away mission, then you're missing the point of what the Bible's all about. So when it comes to Christians today and kind of the distancing that we've done from the idea of missions, and there may be good reasons for that, but when you take that separation into account, we're not getting nearly the full blessing or the full power or impact of the scripture that we could be, because the central theme of mission is missing. All right. And we can work on different things. We can study different things, and we can come to the greatest and deepest knowledge of what's in the text there. But unless we go and put it into practice, unless we live out the mission that we read about and that we study about through the pages of the Bible, we're missing the point. We're missing the point. Essentially, the idea of mission is the key that unlocks the entire Bible. When we read the Bible through the mission mentality, we begin to understand what God was doing from the beginning, how God was working through the time of the Israelites, through the times of the kings, what's going on through the prophets and the law and the minor prophets, all the way down through the New Testament narratives to see Jesus himself here on earth. We have to look at the Bible through the lens of mission if we are going to get the point. So when you think about it from that perspective, how core the idea of mission and the mission mentality is to spirituality and Adventism in particular, it makes perfect sense. If I was the enemy, if I was trying to make Adventism useless and pointless, I think the one thing I'd want to get rid of or put a sour impression on is the idea of mission. And that's exactly what we have. I actually asked the professor the question in class today. You know, we see what's happened with schools that once had mission clearly in their name and in their identity, changing to something else. You have the churches who used to display mission spotlight consistently every week. We never see them anymore. You have the schools that used to promote mission and service, and I'm talking about high schools as well. And yet now it's all about the theology and ideas and having the right answer. We've kind of lost all this kind of thing. And I wanted to know, in his opinion, why was this shift happening? And why do we find ourselves where we do right now? And he brought up some really good points. First was that the idea of mission became dirty. It became polluted. If you've heard that term neocolonialism, which again, most of the people who use it don't have any idea what they're talking about, but there is some basis to the use of that word when it comes to the reasons why mission is not viewed in such a positive light. It became associated with something in a negative way. As a result, those who became missionaries and the idea of becoming a missionary was looked down upon. It was looked at as, what are you really trying to do? What's your intent here? What's your angle? As opposed to its original intent of being someone who's going to share the gospel with someone. And so even back then, in that time, you had people who were looking down on missions, down on missionaries, because they felt like the people who identified as missionaries and who said what they were doing was mission were not doing things that matched up with what the Bible taught. So as a result, even though biblically speaking, what they were doing was not mission, and by biblical definition, they were not missionaries, those terms ended up getting a bad rap because of those people. And that's fair. I get that. I understand that. It makes perfect sense. So what's interesting about it is it puts us in a position now where we lose the practical aspect of faith. So that's where you get people talking about faith. You don't have to do anything, sit still and wait. The acting part that comes on part of humanity, according to the Bible, is lost. So essentially, we're not people who work together with God in anything anymore. He's there and we're here. Nothing that we do is going to change anything that he's going to do. So we just kind of live however, even though we acknowledge that there's a God. The irony is that's not really theism anymore. That's deism. And deism is, for just a brief definition or a short explanation of it, it's basically just you believe that God is real and you kind of acknowledge his existence, but you don't see him connecting with your life. It's separate. There's the spiritual realm and there's the human, the natural realm. And yeah, we know that exists, but it doesn't really come into contact with us. There's no word made flesh and dwelt among us like we see with Jesus. That's not a possibility to a deist. So when it comes to a solution, it's going to take us looking with an honest eye into our failures, our shortcomings, and taking an honest look at Jesus and the way that he intended for his message to be shared. And then going back to that and saying, you know what? We did things this way and this wasn't the best way to do it. We lost a lot of credibility doing it this way. But when you look at Christ's method of reaching people, he established credibility with others. And that's how he was able to reach them in a positive way and have them enjoy what he had to say and chase him down to look for more of that as opposed to just chasing him away. We have to be careful that we don't follow in the same steps and call the things that we're doing mission that are not mission, and identify as missionaries when we're not acting like true missionaries, because that's how Christians historically lost their credibility with the world around them, and we can do the very same thing today. I don't think we can afford to do that. Another really interesting point that came up today, never thought of this, but it was obvious that Adventism as a movement, before being identified as a religion, as a movement, it wasn't supposed to last very long. The whole idea was Jesus is coming, get your junk together, he's coming soon. I mean, by the time they started talking about this stuff, 1844, that was maybe, 10, 15 years into all of this kind of stuff. It was a very fast moving movement. It wasn't supposed to last until 2023, where we are and beyond. 1844, 2023, what's that? Almost 200 years ago? That's a long time for a movement that's supposed to be moving quick. But the aspect of it we don't think about is that the movement that applied then at that time in that context makes us using the same methods outdated now. How many, think about it this way, how much of life in 1844 are we still using today? They didn't have cars in 1844, did they? Was that a thing back then? I don't know, but if they did have cars back then, People are not driving around those cars today as their main mode of transportation. Shoot, was it 1901, something like that? The Wright brothers started developing planes. Majority of people on Earth are not using boats and slow steamboats to get around the world now. We're flying. Life is not the same as it was back then in 1844. And if we're using the same mentality, the same ideologies, the same interpretations, well, maybe I don't want to use the word interpretations, because I think in terms of principles, the message is still the same, and we can get the same thing regardless of the time period that we're in. But the bottom line is that maybe, just maybe, some new approaches could be considered to say, how do we apply this truth to our time in a way that's going to be catchy and inspiring? The people back then really set the world on fire. Everybody knew about this thing, and everyone was looking out to see what was going to happen. Whereas today, the whole hype has died down from 1844. We're still trying to ride the coattails of that same stuff. And people are over that. We've gone from the agrarian age to the industrial age to the information age to the digital age, right? And the Bible, which was introduced in an agrarian age and formulated more in and SDA, was the Adventist, was formed in the industrial age. So all of that ideology, which trickled from agrarian and industrial, we're still using the same stuff today. But the times have changed. The age is different. So the way that we should be trying to impact other people, and the way that we should be, I keep coming back to this word interpreting. Maybe that's one of the better words I can use. And I'll use it in this way. The way that we interpret what we are here to do, and in the ways we're supposed to do it, maybe that's what needs reinterpreting when it comes to the message. Not reinterpreting the message, but reinterpreting our approach and the way that we go about sharing the message. That needs a reinterpretation. I mean, it's just ironic because everything else in the world has developed, but Adventism has not. A lot of really cool questions and discussions that came up in the class today. Man, I was locked in. It was good stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing what else we talk about these next few days. Literally, we only have maybe 4 more days in this class, which is kind of crazy. But I'm just looking forward to more of these questions and the ideas, just to really formulate, okay, how do I change my approach? How do I reinterpret the way that I engage with the scripture so that I can be more impactful in sharing Jesus and gospel and good news and hope and joy and peace and love with others? Most likely it's going to be something that takes me out of my comfort zone and gets me away from the things I'm used to. But ultimately, that's what mission is all about. That's what serving others is all about. Getting out of my comfort zone and being willing to engage with someone in their comfort zone. So I'm gonna leave it there for today. Really cool stuff. Like, subscribe if you found it cool. Leave a comment. Talk about something. I don't know. There was a lot that we talked about in this video. So if something stood out to you and spurred a thought, go ahead and throw it down there and let's talk about it. But I'll catch you in the next one, all right? We out. Peace.